Welcome to your safe space, the podcast your partner, friends, parents, whoever thinks it's dirty. Don't have time to read books? Want to understand all the jokes in the TikToks? We got you, fam. We're the Spice Traders, and we deal in spicy books. I'm Katie, and I need it to make sense.
I'm Liz, and I'm hypercritical.
Before we get to today's episode, we want to encourage you to check out our Patreon, where we publish extra episodes every other week, as well as ad-free versions of our regular feed episodes. Also, any series we read past the first book, all that coverage is Patreon only, so think series like ACOTAR, Fourth Wing, Guild. Anyway, we really appreciate the support and encouragement to continue doing something we love and sharing it with you.
Thanks in advance for checking that out. As always, we start this episode with 3 things. First is a generic trigger warning. You can find specific triggers for this book in our show notes, so please check those out. We also use foul language and talk a lot about sex. If you have sensitivity to either of those things, our podcast probably isn't for you.
Second, our episodes talk about books, the whole book, nothing but the book, so help me goddess. If you don't want something spoiled, don't listen to this episode.
And finally, we acknowledge that a good book can hit you at the wrong time. Our views discussed in our episodes are our opinion, and we don't want to diminish the work or the talents of the authors in our community. That said, we have some notes.
So, topic at hand, what are we talking about today, girl?
Today we're talking about The Ritual by Shantel Tessier? Tessier?
That's how I
should
read
have looked
it,
at how to
Tessier.
say her name.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Glad we're in agreement. This was published in 2021, and it is the first of the Lords series, like all caps Lords as in an acronym. Currently with 6 books, it's unclear if there will be more. Fortunately, though later books contain spoilers from previous books, most of the books can be read as standalones. I did look that up too because I was really curious. I knew it was a series and I want to know who it followed, and I kind of skimmed through the characters, and they're not even names I recognize from this book. So I assume there's like callbacks.
Yeah.
But
is there not one about, I didn't look this up. Is there not one about Gunnar and Sarah?
I thought there would be, but I didn't see one.
Okay. Interesting. I wanted to read their story because they seem like they're having a great time.
Me too. I can't wait to talk about them. Yeah, I didn't. It's possible I missed it. I kind of just clicked through on Goodreads and like read the summaries, but I never saw the names Gunnar and Sarah. I didn't even see Matt. Like I saw none of the names were names I recognized.
Yeah, I see. There's one about Tyson, which is cool. I want to see his story, but all of the other ones I don't recognize. And I don't want to read one about Matt. I'm glad there's not one about him. Fuck that guy.
No, me either. Fuck that guy. I was just curious if he had one, but I would never read one because fuck that guy.
Yeah.
So anyway, this book is a chunker coming in at 606 pages. And I got to tell you now, I didn't think... when I knew vaguely what this book was about and then I saw how long it was, I thought it was going to feel too fucking long. It does not feel too fucking long.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I'm having a great time through all 450 pages I've read so far.
Same. Yeah.
But it's big. So we have to talk about the cover. The cover that I have on my Kindle is a real person. It's a black and white man with his hand up, and half of his face is like a skull, as if it's like painted on. And you kind of get this vague like Gothic architecture in the background. I know that in many, many books, we do not like real people on covers. This one does not bother me at all.
No, it's really well done. I honestly, and I know this is really unfair, I couldn't tell you why it doesn't bother me.
I know. I was hoping you would have a reason that I could be like, yes, but I don't. I don't have a reason. It just doesn't. Maybe because I do find him objectively attractive if I were to look at this picture, and it just kind of works for the book. I don't know.
Well, I think so. Okay, now that I'm looking at it, I think there's 2 things. One, it's not egregious. So it's like, I think often we're like, oh, that's just a naked built man on the cover for no reason. Or, like there's something wrong with their anatomy or slightly off that's like it takes us out of the jam to see. There's nothing like that going on. And it's like a good Photoshop job. Like it just all kind of melds together. Like even though there's a person on the cover, the whole cover is the same like color tone. And so yes, it really flows well together, I think.
It does. And I think the fact that half of his face, I mean, it's edited, but that half of his face is painted, it kind of reminds me of the Peter Pan books we've read and that kind of skull. Also, it's enough of that kind of artistic layer that it's not just like some random dude's entire face.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And I just now realized that skull is supposed to be what their masks probably look like, but that's not what I pictured.
That's not what I pictured either.
All right, I was like, that's not what I saw. I do also want to point out that there is a subtle cover version of these books. It's also black and white, and it just says The Ritual. But there's white roses with like blood droplets on them.
Yeah, that one's also really pretty.
It's really pretty. This is too detailed, but I do find it interesting. At the start of every chapter and in the title, The Ritual, the T is upside down, like an upside down cross, but there's no demonic Christian like overtone. So I thought that was an interesting choice. It's culty, but I mean, I guess they mean a cathedral and they definitely bastardized that cathedral, but like, I mean, it was just a strange choice. So I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah. And I liked it, right? Like I liked that there wasn't,
yeah.
I mean, there's definitely, initiations that we'll get into, but it doesn't have to do with like there's like no iconography in the religious sense, which was it's very secular.
Yes, which I appreciated. So
I liked it.
Let's talk about it.
After this, we're reading the third priest book, so we're gonna get plenty of it in that book.
Yes, we will, and I can't wait. The back half of this year is very spicy.
Yeah, girl, it's so good. I gotta say,
it's so good. I texted Katie just real quick. I texted Katie and said that like this book makes me blush. Usually I can read books like when I go to the bathroom at work. This book I feel like I cannot read in public for some reason. Like it makes me nervous isn't the right word. Like it's so dirty.
Yeah, flustered. Like it's like people can read it on your face what you're reading.
Yeah. So anyway, let's get into it because I want to talk. So Katie, take it away.
All right. So a little bit of business up front. We're going to be splitting this book into 3 parts. We did say it's a chunker. That's just, it would be a long ass episode if we tried to shove it into more than that. So this is just going to be part 1, and we're going to cover chapters 1 through 22, and then we'll have part 2. And then at the end of part 3 is when we're going to do our rating. So moving on to the book. This is on Kindle Unlimited, which I love. And then we get a couple of things before we jump into the book. One of them is a playlist. Most of the songs on the playlist I was not familiar with, and I didn't listen to them, so I can't speak to whether it's a good one or not. I will say this book kind of did the annoying thing where it pulled out songs from the playlist at given points during the book that would just say, oh, this song by this band was playing. And I didn't need that so much. So that's kind of why I've got a chip on my shoulder about the playlist.
Yeah, I didn't like that, especially the scene that we get a lot of those back to back. The author, through the scene, they'll name like 7 songs, but it's really like a couple minutes have passed. Like not enough has happened to cover that amount of time. And that bugged me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned this before. Like I would just much prefer that you describe what the music sounds like rather than telling me the specific song. But, exactly. It was very minor. That's just very minor feedback from my perspective. The second thing that we get is trigger warning. So please do check that out. We're going to include it in our show notes because the triggers for this book are important, and this book is a doozy. So you shouldn't read anything that you're not comfortable with, but this is very much a dark romance and a departure from what we usually cover. So just be forewarned.
I had a couple notes on the pre-book information. She gives a disclaimer, I think it's somewhere within the triggers, of basically like, hey, this is a work of fiction. I don't condone this behavior. Enjoy. And I appreciated that. Because I was here for it the whole time. But then I, for some reason, chose violence at the start of this book. But I have a valid question here. I'll like, my violence went out the window immediately. But in her disclaimers, she lists a couple acronyms. One says OTTH and one says PJH. And she didn't explain what the acronyms are. And I don't know what that meant. And then she said like not an RH. And I was like, reverse harem? Hero? What is H? What are these acronyms? Like, I don't know what any of this means. And it bothered me that would be a disclaimer / trigger, but like, I don't know what that means. And then I did not do the research on my own to look it up. I was just like, girl, explain yourself. What is this? Yeah.
I mean, so some of them she does explain, like the OTTH, for example, she says over the top and then H, and then JPH, jealous and possessive H,
So is that hero? I guess
I
my
don't
question was about
know.
the H, whatever
Yeah.
H meant.
But I didn't do research either, and I don't know what RH is, and I don't know what the H means. I saw that too, and I was just like, okay, I guess it's kind of wild to read as much smut as we do and still not like be fully in the nomenclature.
Yeah. So she did do the OTT part and the possessive jealous fine. So I assumed H was hero, but then when it got to RH, my brain for RH goes to reverse harem, but I was like, but that's now a different H. Like reverse hero, not a real hero. I was like, not a romantic hero. I was like, if you're gonna explain part of the acronym, explain the whole acronym.
Yeah, and like just a cursory like Google doesn't help either, because like OTTH, most of the internet is like on the third hand, and I'm like, that's not what that means for sure. and then I add over the top, and then like the H isn't coming up. So I don't know. If you know, let us know. It was not germane to my enjoyment of the book. So if that helps.
No, I didn't care. I just wanted to point it out because I was like, girl, what? And then that just added to me choosing violence, and so my next two notes are also violent, and then I'm all in.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Look, we're human people and we're allowed to change our minds. So
Let's
jump into the story. So we get a prologue, and this is also one of those wild times where I thought about people who don't read prologues, and I was just like, what
How?
an interesting way to go through the world. How?
The prologue is there for a reason. Do I
It's
always
literally
love
part
them?
of the book.
No, it's part of the book. Like, okay, skip the table of contents. Fine, you don't need that. You'll see that. The prologue is part of the book, and this one especially explains like the entire premise of the relationship that we're getting into.
Yeah, which is helpful, right? So this prologue, like you mentioned, it gives us an idea of what the lords are, and this is where we learn what the acronym stands for. And this applies to male members of society only, because women can't be lords. They're just objects. And that sounds, look, there's some very, very problematic concepts. And the smut is worth it. It's a great time in the context of the fiction. You just have to know that it is fiction. I'll say that. And then that's the only thing I'm going to say about it.
Perfect. I'm not going to come back to it.
So anyway, a lord is, quote, he is a leader, believes in order, knows when to rule, and is a deity. Which, that last one, I'm just like, okay.
I know, the rolls my eyes rolled.
I know. I rolled my eyes into the next century.
I was just like, okay, guys.
Yeah, so just go with it. And then so they talk about the idea of once a lord has gone through his trials, he will be rewarded with a chosen one who is, quote, a gift for his servitude, end quote. So then we start with Riot, R-Y-A-T. Do you have any thoughts on the name?
That was my second point of contention, is I was like, why is his name Riot? Why is it not Ryan or Wyatt? Like, what the fuck is this name? And until you, because I know you use talk to text, have your misspelling of his name in your notes, I just never said his name out loud in my head because I hated it. But it being Riot, like R-I-O-T, works for him. So...
Yeah.
Fine. It didn't take me out of the fantasy. I moved on pretty quick. I was like, that's just his name. I think it's a stupid name. It looks like a misspelling of Ryan, and I don't like that.
Yeah, it definitely was one of those words where I like my reading stuttered a little bit. I was like, riot. Okay,
Yeah,
cool, whatever.
I think that's why in my reading, I just didn't say anything. I was like, yep, I know who that is. Check.
Yeah. So we start with Riot, and this book is told from two first-person point of views, one from Riot and then one from Blakely, who we'll meet in a little bit. But we start with Riot, and we see bits and pieces of his journey through college at Barrington College. We start with freshman year, which is the test of loyalty. And for this challenge, Riot is in a room where he knows he and the others are being watched. Another lord is brought in, tied to a chair, and it's clear that this lord has done something wrong to betray his vows. Riot and the rest of the initiates with him are asked what they should do with the man, and Riot volunteers to mete out justice. And so he ends up slitting the man's throat as he calls him a traitor. Then we see sophomore year, which is the trial of devotion. This challenge is basically a boxing match, but Riot knows that he has to kill the man he's fighting to really make an impression, and so he does just that.
We know exactly who Riot is, like, right off the bat.
Right off the bat. Junior year is the trial of commitment, and Riot is on a mission with another initiate named Matt. They are at another lord's house, and they have been tasked with taking him out because he's done something wrong. So they go into the master bedroom, and they see their target asleep with his naked wife. Riot uses a silencer to kill the man with a bullet to the head. Matt wants to take the opportunity to rape the wife. Riot tells him that that's not in the brief and that they need to get the fuck out of there, and he starts walking away. He doesn't see what happens, but somehow the woman wakes up, screams, and ends up dead at the bottom of the stairs. When Riot asks Matt what happened, Matt just says that she fell.
I do find it's kind of reiterated later, but I find it really interesting, and it does help soothe some of my gray area feelings about some of the content in this book. Is Matt says, like, quote, "I'm going to fuck her." And Riot, I don't know if it's here or later, but corrects him verbally and says, like, "No, you want to rape her." And I really appreciate that distinction of like, no, there is a line here and you're crossing it.
Yeah, I liked that too up front, even before we get into the dynamics of the relationship between Riot and Blakely.
Yeah.
So finally, for senior year, we see initiation, and we see Riot being restrained and held in place as he gets branded with the sign of the Lords, which is 3 bars burned into his chest. The man who does this says, quote, "Welcome to the Lords, for you shall reap the benefits of your sacrifice," end quote. And so I think seeing these trials and tribulations is really interesting up front, because we learned that the Lords are basically a series of powerful men, like secret society type thing, in positions of power in the government and valuable companies, etc. Literally the epitome of the old boys club. And Riot really wants to be a part of this, despite the fact that he doesn't really have like a whole lot of affection for his father, who was a lord before him. But during these trials that we see, it's very apparent that Riot is ambitious, and he's constantly aware of how he's being evaluated, and he performs to that expectation.
I was surprised at the start of this book that we went through 3 whole years of college, because it's coded as like a dark academia book. So I thought we would spend more time at college. So I was surprised that it was like freshman, sophomore, junior year, like boom, boom, boom in the first 3 chapters. And like now it's senior year. I'm not complaining about that. I just found it a really interesting dynamic, but it really shows us who this character is and what is expected of him as being a member of the Lords.
Yeah, and I liked that because it made it clear that like Riot's story of becoming a lord is really not what we're here for, right? But it effectively sets up that journey so that it really effectively communicates who he is, what he's gone through, and what his motivations are, which is hard to do.
Yeah, and it was really effectively done here. I was like, all right, girl.
Yeah, it made the stakes feel very high, like literally life and death. So now that Riot is initiated, we see him having a meeting with a mysterious lord. We don't get this guy's name, but he gives Riot another picture and says that this is his new assignment. This is a picture of a woman, and the man tells Riot to make her his chosen. Riot doesn't understand at first and thinks it's a joke because the picture is of Blakely, who is Matt's girlfriend. It's not just that they're boyfriend-girlfriend, they're really in sort of an arranged marriage situation. So when that's the case, those women typically don't get made chosens. They're going to be future wives, not chosens. Not always the case, but typically that's the case.
Yeah, and it seems to be the case for a few of them. Like many of the characters we meet, or at least 2 of the characters we meet, have arranged marriages set up for them, but it's not, it would be odd for them to choose that potential future mate as their chosen.
Right.
And usually they get a choice, and it seems like Riot doesn't get a choice in his chosen.
Exactly. So this lord makes it really clear that Riot must do whatever must be done to make Blakely his chosen, and Riot accepts the mission. So then we switch to Blakely, who's running down a hall at Barrington College, trying to figure out where her class is. And she runs smack into what feels like an immovable force, but it's actually Riot. He tells her to be careful because, quote, "there are animals that run these halls. If you're not careful, one will catch you out," end quote.
I was already here for him and their dynamic, like right off the bat. But I do, because this is who we are, I will point out that there are a handful of typos in this book. And the first one that I noticed came here when they explain, and we'll get in like what he looks like, but there's a quote that says, "Emerald eyes so dark they're almost frighteningly glare down at me," which should just be they're almost frightening, comma. And I was like, okay, Shantel.
Yeah. Not just the typos like that, but also like just dropped punctuation. Like there were frequent periods that were not there at all.
Yeah. And she, this, okay, I guess it's kind of a dig at the author, but it's really a dig at the editor. The author likes to use question marks where there don't need to be question marks. Like in a greeting of hey, it almost always ends with a question mark, but people don't say like, hey, when they like walk into a room. It's like it was jarring to me for the first like, I don't know, 10% of the book. And then I just let it go.
Yeah, I noticed that too. There are a couple of other things in terms of like true editing that I'll point out too, but we're just not there yet. So I think in terms of like readability, there are some rough things about this book, but man, does the smut make up for it. In the beginning, it was jarring to me, and then after that, it never tore me out of the fantasy. I was never like mid smut seeing being like, ugh, punctuation. Like that never happened because it's so good. Yeah, you just drive right past it.
Yeah.
So Blakely is on the back foot. Literally, she's on the floor. All of her books are everywhere, but she can't help but be a little bit turned on by this man who has vivid green eyes and dark hair and a body built like a Mack truck. But she knows him by reputation only, and he's supposed to be cruel and very like standoffish, complex, kind of broody guy, dangerous. Their interaction is brief though, because Matt comes running up to her to help her off the floor. Riot tells Matt, quote, "Keep your bitch on a leash. Otherwise, someone may choose to take her from you," end quote.
Immediately when Matt shows back up, I was like, ew, the would-be rapist Matt? Get the fuck away from me.
I know, yeah. So Riot leaves, and Matt is very territorial immediately and demands to know what happened between Blakely and Riot. But Blakely's like, look, nothing happened. I just fell down. Like, chill out. And so she goes to class and she meets up with her friend Sarah. But Matt's reaction, like beyond what we saw of him on the mission, like the way that he talks to Blakely in this scene is just, I'm out. I'm so out. Like Riot says that thing, keep your bitch on a leash thing. Yeah, fine. That's performative. We'll see that is performative later. But Matt, this is who Matt is.
Yep. And we see him consistently and he's the worst.
Yeah. So when Blake meets up with Sarah, Sarah's very excited because she found a flyer for a party hosted by the Lords. People know that the Lords exist, but they're really couched as more like a secretive frat. They like people don't know about the killing and the secret missions and things like that. There's not a lot of public information about them, obviously.
Right. It's kind of like how we all know Skull and Bones exists, but we don't know what they actually do.
Right. So Sarah's got this flyer, and on the flyer it says, quote, "I vow, you vow, we vow. The ritual is what one must do in order to become a chosen. A chosen must be willing to surrender in all that they do," end quote. Sarah really wants to go to the party. She's like, I'm in. Like, I want the t-shirt. Girl. I'm going to buy the tickets. But Blake is less interested. She knows that Matt is in the Lords, and she honestly wants nothing to do with it because Matt's always so secretive and kind of a dick about it. Plus, she knows that Matt would kill her if she went to a party at the Lord's house. So they haven't really decided if they're going to go yet, but she does end up texting Matt and asks what it means for someone to be chosen. She doesn't immediately get a response, and spoilers, she never does.
No, because Matt is a piece of shit.
Yeah, and she says somewhere, and I'll call it out, but she has this really poignant line about, like, ignoring me is the thing that Matt would do whenever I asked a question he didn't want to answer. Something like that.
Yeah, which, oof.
Yeah. Who hasn't been there?
Right?
So later in the day, Sarah and Blake are talking about this party again, and someone overhears them. And this girl tells them that the Lords are vile and they treat women like property. She says that one of these Lords actually killed one of their chosen before, and that dude's name was Tyson Crawford. But rather than this dissuading them from going, it has the opposite effect and makes both of them very interested. They're like, oh, that kind of sounds like fun.
Listen, I know this poor girl in the front is just like, no, run. And they're like, I don't know. It sounds a little titillating. It sounds great. Titillating.
So as they leave class, they run into Riot and two of his friends. one of these friends is a dude named Gunnar, and it's clear that Gunnar and Sarah have like a flirty thing going on, which is cute and I love.
I'm so here for it.
Blake asks Riot what it means to be chosen, and rather than answer, he tells her to ask Matt why Matt won't choose her. Blake's like, I'm already his girlfriend, and Riot's like, yeah. And Riot's like, quote, keep saying that like it means something.
The way I become pudding whenever Riot is like sassy or domineering is obscene.
It's making so much more sense now why you visibly blush when you read this book.
I could not handle it. Like, I could not handle this book at so many points. And I'm the one who can usually read all the books like on the treadmill at the gym that I don't go to. But like, I can walk, whatever. I can read anything. I could not keep a straight face in this book.
So because Blake hasn't heard from Matt, she corners him in the library and tries to get some answers out of him. But he just stonewalls her and tells her to stay far away from the Lords. Helpful.
If you tell me why, maybe I will, but you're just making me want to go.
Right, exactly. And he's playing into exactly what Riot wants him to do.
Yep, because he's an idiot and Riot's not.
Correct. So we then get a flashback from Riot's perspective about the aftermath of the mission that he was on with Matt. They are questioned by the Lord who sent them on the mission as to what happened, but Riot doesn't rat Matt out. Even when he's alone with this Lord, he doesn't say anything. He's just like, it was an accident. But later, Matt confronts him and accuses him of being a rat. Riot tells him he's not a rat, but Matt threatens to end him, and Riot says, I'd like to see you try.
Just because Matt's a little bitch, and I stand by that.
Matt's a little bitch, and Riot is just confident.
Yeah, and I think he has earned confidence.
Totally. So back to present day, and Riot is straight up stalking Blake. He's sitting in his car looking up at her apartment, and he can see her through the curtain, like as a silhouette, as she gets undressed, and he faps off to that in his car.
I wasn't even mad at the stalking. Like, I'm not mad about anything in this book. None of the potential triggers bothered me.
Yeah, same. I mean, the Lord's book kind of have like this thing. Like, if you've probably seen them on TikTok, and like they have a reputation of being like a dark romance, and so I knew that about them going into it. I didn't go in totally blind, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna give my feminist some champagne and tell her that it will be okay, and this is fiction.
Yes.
And then I just enjoyed the fuck out of it.
Exactly, because some things that I might not like in real life, or certainly would not like in real life, like, don't fucking stalk me. I'm here for this book. Let's go. It is a work of fiction.
Mm-hmm. So we go back to Blake, and it's the night of the party at the Lord's house, and she and Sarah go. Their cell phones and IDs and wallets, etc., are taken at the front door on the pretense that no pictures are allowed inside. They have a great time drinking and dancing, but at some point they turn around and Matt is there with some other girl on his arm. Blake is like, what the fuck? But Matt acts like he doesn't even know her. And Blake is obviously furious. She says internally, quote, I have remained a virgin for him. I've begged him to fuck me, and every damn time he's turned me down. She knew that he had stepped out before on her, but is devastated to learn that he never really stopped doing that. So she tells him that it's over and tells the woman on his arm to enjoy.
Well, and this other girl, like, self-identifies as Matt's girlfriend, and Matt doesn't correct that. So it's not like he's just picking up one-night stands. Like, he fully has just two functioning relationships.
Yep. Uh-huh. Because he's a real piece of shit.
He's a real piece of shit.
Yep. So we cut back to Riot, who's watched this entire exchange from afar. He knows that this makes things a little easier for him, if only in the short term, because he knows that Blake and Matt are sold into marriage for each other. He tells us, quote, he'll marry her because that's what his father told him to do, and she'll hate him because he's shit.
I don't know if it was here a little bit later. I think it was already here. I had the note and the question that, like, obviously I didn't grow up in a world like this of arranged marriages or powerful families, but every time we hear about their marriage, it's like a foregone conclusion. Like, they're gonna get married and she's gonna hate him, fine. And they all act on that pretense. But I'm just like, but you could just not. Like, what's the worst that happens if you don't? Like, if you run away? And we, like, kind of get to that later, but not really with Matt. I'm like, so what? You get disowned? Like, is that really worse? Again, these are all incredibly rich kids. I never have had that like choice, but I just, in looking at what her life is slated to be with Matt, it can't be worse to run away.
Yeah. I mean, so I think they kind of talk about that in this book. I don't remember where, but they talk about the fact that, like, to a certain extent, people around the lords are liabilities because they are targets for people who wish to hurt the lords. And so even I get the impression that even if she were to run away and like not care about like the wealth and whatever, like she would still be in danger if people knew who she was.
Yeah, and that does make sense.
But it is wild, right? Like, it's just a wild thing to think about. Like, you don't actually have a choice here at all.
Yeah, and my whole brain was just like, but what do you mean?
Right. I don't
What do you mean you don't have a choice?
Yeah.
I was like, you can't make me.
Right. And it's just like, in that context, like, I have never been more grateful to be so uninteresting. Like, it is like some people are just so fucking serious about this. And I'm like, I pass. No thanks.
Yeah. No thanks. I can do it myself.
Yeah. So Riot sees Blake go upstairs and decides to intercept her. And it's here that I should mention that he and a lot of the other lords are wearing a mask. So when he bumps into her in the hallway and pushes her inside his room, she doesn't know it's him.
I was going to say, so they wear these masks a lot and they're described as being white masks. And I can't remember if they're described as skulls or not, but I think that's what the cover is alluding to. But I pictured it like if you took the Phantom of the Opera mask and made it a full face mask. That's what I was picturing. Like no skull. Like it wasn't Halloween-y. It was just like a white masquerade mask. Enough to cover your whole face, though.
You know, it's so wild that you say that because I pictured the exact same thing.
Oh my God, I love that. It's because we're soulmates. and we have the same things that we like.
Yeah. I mean, I think they even do say that it's like got skulls or like black whatever mouths or something. No, it was the Phantom of the Opera mask for me.
Okay, good. Me too. Because that's hotter. Otherwise, it's just like, what is it? Scream? Like that doesn't do it for me.
I know.
Get out of here.
So Blake is drunk and clearly a little bit horny, and Riot asks her to let him help her get over Matt. And she's into that. So he handcuffs her and ends up eating her out on the bed. During this exchange, he asks if she's ever been fucked, and this is when he learns that she's a virgin. He tells us internally, quote, Matt is going to hate me because I'm going to fuck his future wife. She will be my chosen, and I will use her in more ways than she ever knew possible. I'll leave scars that he'll have to look at every day knowing that I fucking owned her.
Gives me chills.
Oh my God, you're blushing right now.
I know. I don't know why. I'm not like, again, none of this is new to me. It's not like I've never read this. It's not like I've ever even like, I'm not a virgin. I don't know why. I don't know what this book hits. And I'm just like, oh my God.
I love it.
I love it.
So the next day we learn that Blake doesn't really remember much from the night before. She remembers being eaten out and it's a blur after that. She's not sure if she actually had sex or not. On her way to class, her mother calls her and Blakely tells her, well, you know, me and Matt broke up. And her mother says that's not going to fly because the wedding's still on. Everybody makes sacrifices for marriage and this is just an opportunity for Blake. And then she hangs up. Blake is shocked, but she realizes that her mother probably sees this as an opportunity to see what Blake can get out of Matt monetarily, because whole relationships for her mother are transactional rather than love-based.
Which it seems like that's how they're just viewed in this whole society. But man, her mother is a piece of work.
Yeah, her mother's a piece of work in particular, but there's not a lot of room for love in this dynamic.
No.
Which just makes their dynamic so much better at the end of the book.
I know.
Yeah. Anyway, spoilers. So Blake then runs into Matt, who says he wants to talk. He apologizes for leaving Blake hanging at the party, but his other girlfriend, Ashley, got sick and he had to leave to take care of her.
He even like calls Ashley his girlfriend. Like, I don't... Matthew. How did you think this was going to go over?
Well, he's completely entitled, right? Like he is...
Yeah.
He's so secure in the knowledge that she doesn't have a choice that he can do whatever the fuck he wants.
It's gross.
Yeah, it's really gross. Honestly, like that's the thing that I had a problem with more than the dynamic between like like Blake as Riot's chosen, that kind of thing. Like, and I think that's really well done because that is really skeezy. But the relationship between Riot and Blake is based on consent. There's no consent between Matt and Blake at all.
No, and I think that's a really important thing to reiterate in this book, should anyone read it. All of the things that fall in a uncomfortable gray area do all have clear consent.
Right. Exactly. So Blakely is a little bit relieved knowing that Matt left, but she's also confused because she thought it was Matt who ate her out in that room. And now she's like, okay, well, who the fuck was it? But anyway, she tells Matt to fuck off, and then he grabs her arm like really tight. And that's when Riot shows up and asks Blake if this man is bothering her, which I fucking loved.
Me too.
And she's like, yes, actually, he is bothering me.
Can you take care of this for me? Thank you.
Yeah. But before Riot can mete out any justice, Ashley shows up, and that makes Matt turn into a complete cuck and just walk away.
Who is this other girl? Like, we don't really see much of her in later parts of the book, and it just makes me wonder, A, how Blake has never, like, run into her before, like, how this hasn't happened before, and, like, how long that's been going on. And I'm just... I will never read a book from Matt's perspective if she ever wrote one, which I don't think she will. But I just had a lot of questions because they've been together for years. It's like you've never run into this other girlfriend.
Yeah,
How?
and she gives like one line fixer about like how Barrington is like a really big college, and I'm like, it doesn't matter how big it is. Like he's ostensibly your boyfriend, right? Like you go to the same places.
Exactly. And like, okay, so he ignores you for a couple days, like at a time, but it doesn't seem like he's away from her long enough to,
Right.
I mean, you don't need that much time away from someone having an affair, but it's just wild.
It is. And I thought it was wild here too, the way that Matt like defers to Ashley so much when he's actually such a piece of shit that doesn't see women as people. I thought that was an interesting dynamic that they had.
Yeah, I was really curious to know more about Ashley. We don't find anything out about her, but why does she hold any power over Matt?
Yeah, I don't know. So as Matt and Ashley walk away, that's when Riot whispers in Blake's ear that he told her that Matt was over her. And that's when she realizes that it was Riot with her the night before. So he goes on to say that the only thing that she needs to know about being chosen is, quote, what I did to you was just the beginning. I'll own you, Blake. And I think that's exactly what you want. And the way that her body reacts to those words, she knows that to be true.
She's like, that is what I want, my good man. Yes,
How do you know?
How can you tell?
So they don't see each other for a week, and that's very intentional on Riot's part because he wants Blake to be curious. So at the end of that week, he finds her in the library one evening, and they get a little hot and heavy. She asks some questions about why anybody would choose to be a chosen, and he says that it's something that she would choose for herself, and that even though he would hurt her, he would make sure that she liked it. She says that he only wants her because of Matt, and he doesn't really deny it, but says, quote, that's the exact reason you'll choose to be mine.
We'll get into some things. This is probably more in part 2 of like Riot, quote unquote, lying to Blake, but I don't think he really does. Like from the get-go, it's like, it doesn't not have to do with Matt.
Right. Like that might be the reason that I was put on this trajectory, but like people can change their minds about stuff.
Exactly. And that's okay.
Yeah. So sometime later, Blake comes home to an empty apartment, but she sees a vial next to her bed that says, drink me. It's clear someone has been there, even though it's empty now. Then her mother calls and is furious that Blake, quote, embarrassed Matt. And this is third-hand information that her mom is getting from Matt's mom, and it's clear that Matt is painting himself as the victim.
I would love to hear that conversation.
Oh, God, what a little whiny bitch.
She yelled at me because I was fucking someone else in front of her. Like,
Meh.
what?
Right?
Wah.
Blake's mom tells her that she will not mess this up for the family and then hangs up. And in reaction, Blake says fuck it and drinks the vial.
Consent.
We switch to Riot and we learn that there was GHB in the vial. So Blake is now lying unconscious in her bed. She's wearing one of Matt's old t-shirts, and so Riot's like, you don't need that, and takes it off and decides to burn it. Not right there. He burns it later.
But he burns it like in her kitchen, though.
Yeah. Like in the sink, he sets it on fire.
Yeah.
So then he fingers her and makes her come in her unconscious state, and she moans his name.
Oh.
Then he leaves a card next to her bed that says Chosen One and tells her where to go the next night, and he knows that it's up to her now to choose to be his.
Something I wanted to point out in this book, because, spoilers, this isn't the first time he plays with her when she's unconscious, but I always appreciate smut written by people who understand how sex works and how like female bodies work, because frequently in these scenes, especially when Blake is unconscious, they'll talk about from Riot's perspective that she's not wet yet, and I'm like, yeah, because she's unconscious.
Right.
And I just appreciate the attention to detail of like, sometimes you're not just if I'm asleep, I'm not just ready to go.
No, unless I'm having a sexy dream or something, like that's just biologically not how I'm wired.
Exactly. And I like that kind of level of realism. I didn't need it. I wouldn't have cared, but I like it. It makes it better.
I like it too. It makes it better, and it makes it more like, it's hard to describe what I'm trying to say. I'm like, it makes it more real, these scenes, and in that way makes their dynamic and their relationship and the way that they grow together more believable.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and you phrased that very nicely.
Thank you. I had coffee today.
Oh, I can tell. You are firing on all cylinders.
All of my cylinders are firing. So this card that he's left is offering her the choice to become his chosen, and she does choose to go. Blake dresses in a skimpy dress and very high heels and goes to this abandoned cathedral in the middle of the night. She sees this as choosing something for herself because her entire life has been laid out for her, not just Matt, but even going to Barrington College at all. She wanted to go to Stanford, for example, and these are just two things in her entire life, right? That's the way her life has gone. When she gets to this cathedral, there's a whole bunch of dudes in black coats and masks, and then there's this line of girls in the front, all dressed similarly to her and all kneeling with their hands cuffed behind their backs and their heads bowed. Riot meets her at the top of the aisle and cuffs her hands as well, and then leads her up to this altar situation. And this was a little bit... I had a little bit of trouble picturing it, but what I ended up picturing was like, there's like this platform scaffold situation, and there's an altar in the middle of it, but the altar is like a pool suspended above, and it's glass so people can like see what's happening in there. And so the ceremony is like quasi baptism, but there's nothing holy about it.
No, and this is the only thing that even kind of gets close to anything being remotely religious. Mm-hmm. That's how I pictured it too. I did have a hard time picturing it as well. Like they talk about it being like a baptismal pool, but you can see it and like water can slosh over. It was confusing. It didn't ruin it for me, but I also, if I had to draw it, it would look really awkward.
Yeah, I didn't think about it too much because I didn't want to get mired in the details.
Exactly. And it was fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like it.
So Riot leads her into this pool, and they say the words, I vow, you vow, we vow, and then he pushes her underwater. When she comes up, he has to claim her in some way, but he doesn't want to share any part of her body that he doesn't have to, and so he makes her suck him off. He then pulls her up, whispers in her ear, quote, "Don't be ashamed, Blake. You are my chosen. Be proud. I know I am," end quote. And then he takes her outside around the side of this chapel cathedral thing and takes her virginity against the wall. It's something that he's wanted to do but didn't want anybody else to see. And as he does so, he says, quote, "You live for me now, and I live for you. You serve and obey me, and I protect and own you."
I was here for this whole thing. And I like I guess this is kind of that cue the public sex act. And we know that there's a lot of public sex acts that happen at Lord's. But I like the character trait of him that he's like, I'm not sharing. I don't want anyone to watch. I'm doing this part publicly because I have to, and I'm not showing any part of your body to anybody else. And I will not share.
I liked that too. Like it was an effective way to set a boundary.
Exactly.
I also liked, like, this entire scene was very chaotic and it was written as such, but it still, like, was a great scene.
Yes.
Like, I never got confused as to what was happening or whether she was having a great time, or, like, there was no ambiguity in that sense.
No, and I appreciate that throughout this whole book. It's very clear that she's here for all the things that happened to her. And for as much smut as there is in this book, and kind of taking into account some of those typos and, like, editing issues, I was waiting for there to be some scenes that didn't physiologically make sense. And there's only one scene that there is kind of a continuity error. But it's, like, after the conclusion of the sex. So I was impressed. I was like, okay, cool. These scenes are well mapped out. I see exactly what is happening.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see which one where that happens, because I don't remember.
It's in part 2. I can tell you now. I'll tell you in part 2. But it's in part 2, and he handcuffs her behind her back, and then they fuck. And then he gets up and leaves and is like, get dressed. And she does. But he never unhandcuffs her.
Oh, whoops.
And so in my head, she's just, like, struggling to put a shirt on with her hands behind her back. So it's really subtle. It doesn't matter. But, like,
Yeah.
I went back and checked, and he never uncuffs her.
That's really funny.
Like, whoops.
He really likes handcuffs.
He loves handcuffs, and she's not opposed to them.
Nope, not at all. So they leave the cathedral and he takes her back to the Lord's house. Blake is shocked, but she's also spiraling because she really liked what just happened and she doesn't know what's wrong with her. When they get to his room, she takes a shower, and when she's clean, he ties her to the bed. He teases her a little bit, but then he just leaves her like that and goes back to the cathedral for the rest of the ceremony.
I just love the power play.
Yeah. Just like, all right, I'll be back. And we learn, like, when he goes back to the cathedral that he's got, like, cameras in his room to keep an eye on her just to make sure that she's okay. But I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Which I like that.
Yeah. So he sits next to Gunnar, who has chosen Sarah, and they both watch as Matt chooses Ashley. But it's clear that Matt is, like, angry because he's a small man, and he holds Ashley down under the water until her body goes slack. Riot stands up and gives him a warning, and Matt pulls Ashley out of the water and she sputters for breath. Dick.
You almost killed her right there.
Mm-hmm. As Riot leaves the cathedral, his father calls him, and he tells his father that he was successful in his mission. When he hangs up, he tells us internally, quote, Matt will not get anywhere near her, Blake. Not until I physically hand her over after graduation, and there won't be anything left of her for him to take.
It just, the possessiveness just really hits in this book.
I know. It's great. Because I don't see it, even when I was reading it the first time through, like, I never saw it as, like, he was going to physically diminish her. I think, like, I always read it that he was going to take up all of her attention kind of thing, so that there wouldn't be any place for Matt in her life, in her brain, anywhere.
Yeah, that's how I understood it too. And fully erase him.
Yeah. Oh my God. So when he gets back to his room, Blake is asleep, and so he decides to let her rest for a little longer. He showers, but when he's done, he fucks her again. When they're done, he undoes her, like, handcuffs and gives her some Advil. He's like, you're going to be sore. You should take this.
I want to interject here because the only thing in this book that was, like, almost a sticking point for me was how often he drugs her and, like, fucks her when she's asleep.
Yeah.
But this was a really good point to show that she's consenting to all of that as well. Like, he hands her the pills, and we do see it from his perspective, so do with that what you will. I don't care. But he recognizes, like, I think it's his perspective. It doesn't matter. He recognizes, like, disappointment when he says it's Advil, and he's like, okay, interesting, which to me illustrates very clearly that she's not opposed to being drugged and then taken. And I liked that. Like, those subtle details really help with a lot of the content in this book. It's very thoughtfully done.
But it also, so it serves another purpose for me too. Like, the consent thing is very important for me to make sure that everybody's having a good time. But also, he is attentive to her. And I know, like, the bar is in hell, but, like, this book could very easily be just, like, macho man, like, we only communicate in words, but he reads her like a person, right? And so that really helps me. It helps illustrate that they are in tune with each other.
Yeah, and it makes him a far more attractive male lead, too. Because it could just be, hey, I set up this world, women are property, let's go. And she doesn't do that, even though she could. She being the author, I mean.
Yeah. So during this exchange, this is when Blake asks if they had sex the night at the party, and he tells her no. And then she asks what he did to her the night in her apartment when she took the drugs, and he says, well, I can show you because I recorded it. And she's real turned on by that.
So he fully has cameras all up in her apartment, and here, you can watch.
And I think, like, Riot has the same the same kind of, like, reactions in the book, but it's really... I'm just going to say fun to discover just how much of a freak Blake is as we go through this book.
Yeah. Girl's got some fantasies.
Yeah.
And they're well matched.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm delighted reading it, and Riot is delighted understanding it.
Exactly. And Blake is just delighted to be part of it.
She's just happy to be here. Finally getting fucked. Anyway.
Yep.
So the next day they go back to Blake's apartment because she has no clothes, and she changes, but the outfit that she changes into is unacceptable because it's too short. And so Riot tells her to change, but she refuses. Actually, she thinks that he's joking. So he bends her over the counter and fucks her.
And then burns the outfit.
Yeah. He's like, see how easy that was? She's like, what?
Yeah, like, your skirt is too short. If I could do this, someone else could, and I'm not allowing that.
So then he tells her that he has to go away for the weekend and asks her not to go to the House of Lords while he's away. When she asks why, he tells her that he doesn't trust the people in the house when he's not there, and there will be plenty of opportunities for them to go to parties together. And so she promises that she won't go.
And he answers her, unlike Matt.
Yeah, I mean, he does try to give her a non-answer at first, but when she pushes and he realizes that it's important for her to understand, he's like, okay, this is why. Please don't do it.
Thank you. Good reason.
That's so hard.
Right? It's not that hard.
So later that day, she's in class, and she and Sarah kind of talk briefly about what happened at the ritual ceremony and, like, how they both had a great time.
I want to know more about Sarah and Gunnar, because every time we see Sarah, she seems to be having the time of her life.
Totally. That's why I'm a little bit upset that, like, there's not a book about them, because, like, they seem honestly to be more in like a traditional boyfriend-girlfriend situation.
Yeah, that's the vibe I got too, because they were already kind of flirty. They already kind of had a thing, and now they're just consummating that.
Exactly.
There doesn't seem to be a lot of drama with them.
No. So they leave class, and they see Riot and Gunnar talking to another woman. Matt comes up to Sarah and Blake and tells Blake that this woman that Riot and Gunnar are talking to is named Cindy Williams, and she's supposed to be Riot's wife. He then tells Blake, quote, he may be fucking you for now, but I will be the one who will have you for the rest of your miserable fucking life, and I will never let you see the light of day till death do us part, and that won't come fast enough for you.
I hate him.
Yeah.
I hate him.
He's so gross.
Yeah.
So that's obviously upsetting to Blake, and she beats it, right? But Riot catches up with her, and he can tell that there's something wrong and asks her what's up. He pulls her into a classroom, but she refuses to tell him anything. Basically, it's clear that she's done with this whole idea because she feels like a pawn in other people's games. And so she tells him that unless he's going to bend her over one of these desks and fuck her, then they're done here.
I think she's a little mad that he's like, no.
Yeah, she's
not
like,
right now.
Great, cool, awesome. Just when you want.
I guess
cool,
we're done
awesome.
here.
Bye.
Fine.
So Blake goes home and drinks her sorrows away. And later that night, she calls Sarah to go out. They go to a club and they get hit on by some guys who won't take no for an answer, but eventually they shake them off and have fun dancing. We learn that Riot and Gunnar are also there watching them, though. And they're next to this guy, Tyson Crawford, who's the owner of this club. And you might recognize his name from earlier when I said that there's a rumor that he killed his chosen. He is also a lord. And so Riot asks him to make sure that his staff make sure nobody touches Sarah and Blake.
I want to read that book.
I do too, so badly.
I'm so into more books in this world.
Me too.
Okay, good.
So at some point during the night, Riot and Gunnar make an appearance, and Blake is resigned to the fact that she can't leave her life. The two men join them on the dance floor, and when they dance, Riot tells Blake that she's in so much trouble. And she's like, punish me. And he's
Punish
like,
me,
all
Daddy.
right, you asked for it. And so he cuffs
Let's
her
go.
again, puts her back in the car, drives her back to the apartment. But unfortunately, she's too drunk. She just passes out. So
Girl.
he's like, okay. So he takes her into her apartment and like puts her on the bed. And she's like, she kind of comes awake and she's like, can you take the handcuffs off? And he's like, I will take them off if you tell me what happened earlier. And she's like, nope, I'm all set. Good night. Which I loved for two reasons. Because one, she just really doesn't want to talk. She sees the conversation as futile. And Riot really doesn't like that she's not telling him something. Like,
Exactly.
cannot stop talking about or thinking about it.
You are upset and I need to know why, because I'm here to hurt you, but I'm also here to protect you.
Correct. So he starts teasing her until she tells him what happened. She ends up telling him that, you know, she's having a great time, but like she's really done with the situation. So she's decided that she's just going to run away once Riot is done with her. Riot is beyond incensed, not just because Matt talked to something that is not his, but because he made Blake feel like shit, and because Blake feels like no one wants her.
Oh, Blake.
Yeah. This whole thing was a great interaction between the two of them, because I think it was the first time that Riot understood Blake to have complex feelings and for him to realize that he cares about how she feels.
Yeah. My note at this point was, I know it's not this kind of book, but I do hope we get some tenderness between them and that she doesn't have a shitty adult life with Matt.
Yeah, totally. Spoilers. She doesn't end up with Matt.
I didn't think so. I hope he dies. He probably doesn't, but I'm getting to where I hope
think
he
he
does.
dies.
If he
I think
does,
he does.
great.
I'm pretty sure
Good.
he does. It's
Fuck
been
that
like
guy.
several weeks since I read this book, so
I know,
Might be
you're
talking
so
out of my
far
ass.
ahead.
All right. So then we see Blake having a dream about going for a run back in her home state of Texas. And she is come upon by a man in a mask who then starts to rape her. When she wakes up, she's both turned on and ashamed because she feels like these desires, like for consensual non-consent, are wrong. But it turns out that Riot is still in her apartment and can tell that she's upset and asks why, and again has to sexually tease her until she tells him. When she does, he tells her not to be ashamed of these fantasies because they don't hurt anybody. But she tells him that Matt belittled her and made her feel like something was wrong with her for liking that kind of thing.
Yeah, fuck Matt. He's literally the worst.
He's literally the worst. So this was one of the editing things that I wanted to bring up because they have this conversation, but then we see a flashback in the next chapter of Blake actually telling Matt the thing that she just told Riot. And I feel like it was a bit unnecessary to have both. Like, just give me one.
Yeah, I didn't need to actually see it. There's a couple times in this because there's some interesting time jumping that happens. And some of it I think is effective, like jumping back to see more on that night, that mission with Matt and Riot. But there's a couple times later, like this one, that I just didn't need. It could have been cut out. Or it just kind of became confusing where I was like, wait, has this happened yet? And then it would jump back and show that thing. And I was like, I didn't need you to do this weird time jump, especially when we are now functioning in like the same month.
Yeah, and it was also a little bit jarring because some of these, so what am I saying? Jumps back in time, like flashbacks and dreams, are in the same font. And so it's not clear to me every time like what's real and what's not. Like, this was a dream, but then she'll also have a flashback that's very similar because it's literally Riot and her acting out her dream. But like they're both in the same font, they're both in the same context, and so it's kind of confusing.
Yeah. It is confusing. And even this, when the dream sequence we're going to get into, I thought it was a memory because she, like, the dream is a familiar place to her. She's like, it's the road that Matt told me not to run on. And I was like, okay, so this has happened to you before?
Right, exactly. And all of the other things that we've seen in that font have not been dreams. So I was like, did that actually happen?
Yeah, it is very confusing.
Yeah.
There is a good thing that I do like in this conversation, and their ongoing conversation about the consensual non-consent, which I did find interesting. That's what I've always called it, but Riot calls it a forced sex fantasy, and makes the discrimination. I don't remember if it's in his inner monologue or out loud to Blake, but that like it's not. He like specifies like a rape fantasy has to do with the violence, a forced sex fantasy has to do with losing control, and like there's this like line here, and it kind of goes back to that line in the early on in the book, and I just liked that, again, doubling down of consent is a thing, like that consensual non-consent. It's a forced sex fantasy, but it's not like you don't. Riot understands like you don't want to be raped, like no one wants to be raped. Some people don't want to have any control or power though, but they want to agree to it.
Yeah. I liked that too. And I just liked the way that they talked about it, right? Like they talk about it in very specific terms like that. And Riot is very knowledgeable about that kind of thing.
Yeah. And explicitly asks her, like, is that something you would want to try? And she explicitly says yes.
Right. And she's like, when are you going to do it? And he's like, do you want to know when I'm going to do it? And she's like, oh, no, you're right. I don't.
He's like, that kind of goes against what your fantasy is, does it not?
Right.
But I'll tell you if you want to be prepared, I guess.
He's like, it's up to you.
I'm here for you, sweetheart.
So on the heels of that conversation, Riot internally thinks that it's ironic that Matt tried to rape an assignment's wife, but belittled Blake for having a fantasy like that.
Yeah, because Matt's a piece of shit.
Yep. Literally smaller than the shit on your shoe.
I also feel like he has a really tiny dick.
Oh, I'm sure he does. Yeah.
He has to.
That he doesn't know how to use.
No, poor Ashley. It can't be fun for her. She's not having a good time.
I'm sure. So in the morning, they say goodbye because this is when Riot has to go to see his father in upstate New York. But before he does, he goes to the Lord's house to see Matt, who's working out in the gym. He starts beating Matt up and says that Blake is his and that Matt needs to keep his hands to himself. Riot's friends Gunner and Prickett are Prickett? Yeah, Prickett.
I think it's Prickett.
Yeah. What's his name? Riot's friends Gunner and Prickett are there and help him, but afterwards they ask him what the fuck he was doing and if he's falling for Blake because he's acting crazy. He tells them that he didn't need their help and if they were uncomfortable they shouldn't have intervened. But they just tell him, quote, I'd hate for you to come this far and lose it all over a piece of ass.
But she's not just a piece of ass.
She's not just a piece of ass. That's the thing.
He loves her. He just doesn't know it yet.
So we next see him on a private jet to see his father, and the Lord that gave him Blake as an assignment calls him and says that he's heard that there's been a problem with Matt. And Riot knows immediately that Matt has already complained to somebody about what happened in the gym. Little whiny bitch.
Oh, seriously. Stop calling your mommy for everything.
Totally. He starts to say that it won't happen again, but the Lord is like, no need. He's like, quote, you do whatever the fuck is necessary to keep him away from her, and I'll make sure these pesky rumors are never heard of. And Riot couldn't be happier.
It was at this point that I didn't think it was correct, but I made the correct prediction on who this mystery lord was.
I think I did too, and I was like, okay, because who else would give... It's either somebody who really has a chip on their shoulder against Matt or really wants to protect Blake.
Yeah, and it's the latter.
Yeah. So when Riot sees his father, they talk about Matt and how desperate he is because he feels like he's losing his grip on Blake, which he is. We learn that he's offered to buy Blake for $50,000. So Riot's father asks Riot how much he would offer. But Riot's like, I'm marrying Cindy. I don't understand the question. And his father's like, I can't tell you why, but I need to know how much Blake is worth to you. And it was here I was like, are they going to get married? Are they going to kiss?
I know.
Are they going to be together?
Are they going to kiss? I'm going to point it out in part 2 because that's when we'll talk about it. But in all of, it's not a huge deal, but I think it's fascinating the way they do this. In all of the sex that they have had, they've never once kissed on the mouth.
Yep.
And I did clock that. I was like, are they going to kiss? I need them to kiss.
Yeah. They haven't kissed yet. And when they do finally kiss, it's great. It's great.
Oh, it's so great. It's so
sweet.
great. Yeah, I love it.
So, unbeknownst to Blake, Riot is coming back from his trip early. She thinks that he's going to be gone the whole weekend, but he comes back that night. And unbeknownst to her, he sneaks into her room. He hogties her, puts a bag over his head or over her head, and then puts her in a van and takes her to a secondary location where he has his way with her, fulfilling the fantasy that they had just talked about.
Which I was surprised too that he came back early, just in the way of I was like, oh good, I thought he was gonna be gone longer. But like, girl, you just talked about it. And then even in my head, like, girl, they just talked about it. Of course he's not gonna wait. Like, of course he lied.
Of course. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And even in this scene, Blake is like, I knew it was you even before you spoke. Like, so she's having a great time from the jump. Like, the scene is just great.
It's so great. And he likes that. He is appreciative that she can recognize him even when he doesn't speak. Because he says, we'll get to it in part 2, but he says later, like, I spoke so you knew it was me and therefore could enjoy it. And she was like, no, I already knew. I didn't need that.
No, I'm good. He's like, oh. He like preens a little bit. He's like, oh, yeah,
he's like,
I'm gonna take
okay.
compliment.
He like tries, I feel like he tries to be like, you're damn right you knew. She knows.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I just love it.
All right, friends. Well, that is actually where we're going to end our coverage of part 1. And I know that's kind of a cliffhanger, so you'll just have to join us in 2 weeks for part 2. But we did it. Those are our thoughts on part 1 of The Ritual by Shantel Tessier. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Let us know what you thought on the socials. You can find us on TikTok, YouTube, and Goodreads at Spice Traders Pod. And if you like our podcast and want more, you know you can always check out our Patreon, where we release Patreon-exclusive episodes on our off weeks. And if you really, really like us, drop us a review wherever you listen. But until next time, we'll see ya. Bye.
Bye.